Today, we are going to be talking about and demonstrating the latest release from Perspectium, the Carbon release. My name is Craig McDonough, and I'll be your host for the webinar. I'm joined by Paul Wynn, who's going to be diving into the technical detail of the release and demonstrating the new functionality to you. Welcome, Paul, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Craig, and thanks everyone for joining us today.
Alrighty, so you may recall that we only recently started doing these release webinars, and we did them for these reasons. We first of all, you told us that you wanted to know more about each release, and so in response to that, we're conducting one of these webinars each time we do a release. We would absolutely encourage you to ask questions during the session. If you have any questions at all, just type them into the question panel on your GoToWebinar panel on the screen, and we'll get to as many of those as we can as we go through the session today. The session is being recorded, and we will send it out to you after the event. So if you need to drop off partway through, or if you want to share it with someone else you're working with, then you can absolutely do that. We'll send you that link, hopefully within 24 hours or so of the webinar completing. You may also recall that we changed our release naming scheme to make it easier for people to remember which release they were on. So this one is called Carbon, so let's talk about quickly what carbon is. This is just for the chemistry geeks. So about 20% of your weight is carbon. We know about more things that contain carbon than things that don't. The carbon atoms in your body were once part of the atmosphere, and carbon comes from helium burning in stars. But more importantly than any of that, carbon is the latest release from Perspectium, and it's what we're going to be talking about for the next little while. So let's get into it and look at the release themes for carbon. So the three themes that we're going to talk about today are around user experience improvements, privacy enhancements, and some new endpoints and integrations. Let's start off by taking a look at the first of these themes, and we'll look at how we've improved the user experience in the Carbon release. We'll start by looking at something that we call ready to run. You'll recall that the ready to run approach was actually something that we introduced back in the Bismuth release. It's a new philosophy for Perspectium products, where we wanted to make our products much easier to set up out of the box, so that when you first started using Perspectium, a simple configuration activity would have the product ready to run in just a few clicks. When we first introduced this idea, it was really just working on the incident table, but in Carbon, we've extended that to allow you to choose any table in the system and rapidly generate dynamic and bulk shares. Paul, anything to add to that?
I think to your point, Craig, it was kind of ways for people who quickly want to set up, sharing data. The current setup right now is you have to go through and manually create the dynamic share, create the bulk share, create the target queue. You need to enter all the right information, make sure you have the target queue specified in each. So by using this ready to run, for those who just want to quickly get data set up so they can go do it in the data replication to a database, for example, they can use this one UI page, just fill in a couple things, click submit, and you're ready to go, ready to run, as you say. The advanced functionality for those who like using that type of stuff is still there. It's still available for you to go through and tinker with it and so forth. But this is just a way for people who don't want to go through all that configuration just to quickly get up and running.
Yeah, that's a good point, Paul. It's we haven't removed anything with this. This is additional. This is something that's sitting on top of what we already have. So it's an additional way that you can configure Perspectium. In addition to that, we also spent some time in the Carbon release enhancing the usability of our Observer product. Now, for those of you not familiar with Observer, this is a product that allows you to monitor and trend ServiceNow performance to predict issues, shorten development time, and safely upgrade. There have been several usability enhancements in the Carbon release, including a new overview page, a reorganization of problem groups, better grouping of alerts, and more control over when alerts fire, along with the ability to set your own alert thresholds. We also added support for hourly observer actions, in addition to the already existing every minute and every day actions that we had previously. Sometimes you don't need to collect data every minute, but once a day is just not enough. So this new option gives you a middle ground for collecting data. Paul's going to show us this new interface in just a few minutes, but in the meantime, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I think to your point, Greg, we took a lot of feedback from customers and did our own internal review and kind of changed Observer to make it a little bit more usable. As you said, we had that new overview page to kind of give you an overview of the different issues that can occur as we monitor your ServiceNow instance, so that you can kind of see it all in one place. Kind of like a dashboard view in a way. The what we used to call trend groups, we call them problem groups now, are kind of reorganized, renamed to kind of better indicate exactly what you're looking at. And as you mentioned, now we have alerts that we can fire it immediately, and then we can also track every hour. Things like that just kind of enhance the product, make it more usable, more more for you to see right away what you're trying to look at versus trying to have to dig into it as much as you had to do before.
Yeah, so it's become a whole lot more intuitive, and we'll see that in just a second. But before we do, the last feature in the sort of user experience category that we wanted to talk about is actually one that we're very excited about here at Perspectium, and it's called Nucleus. It's a new approach to integrations that will dramatically increase the type of integrations that we can help you with. As you know, Perspectium allows you to connect ServiceNow and Salesforce to a range of different business applications, databases, ITSM tools, service providers, and other third parties. In this diagram, they're all just illustrated there as supported endpoints. So with Nucleus, what we're going to do is increase the number of use cases, number of ways you can use Perspectium by allowing you to connect any of those supported endpoints to any other supported endpoints. And we'll do that via a new interface, which Paul is going to show you in just a minute. So Nucleus is a whole new approach to integration, and we've accompanied that with a whole new approach to the user interface as well. Now, even people that don't have ServiceNow or Salesforce can have Perspectium-powered integrations. But don't worry, again, if you've been using Perspectium for a while and you're comfortable with the interface you've been using, you absolutely don't have to change. This is additional functionality that's been built on top of the Perspectium that you already know and love. But as they say, a live demo is worth 1,000 screenshots. So Paul, can you show us a little bit of what Nucleus looks like, and maybe show us some of the other things that we've had that we've been talking about as well.
Yep. So let me share my screen. So I'm actually going to start off, kind of going into order. We kind of talked about things. I'll start off with ready to run. Ready to run, as we talked about, just a new feature under our Perspectium application. We have the Perspectium application in ServiceNow, and then under the replicator section, there's this ready to run tab. And as you can see now, previously with the business release, the ready to run option was primarily starting off as a use case with the incident table. And now we've added, the ability to choose any of the tables that are in ServiceNow. So for example, if I were just to choose, for example, change task, and then I go back and choose a different table. Let's just say I choose service request as another one. Remember where that is. The idea here is the fact that you can choose pretty much any table you want. And the information, because I already went through this setup before, is kind of pre-populated from before. My ServiceNow information, my MBS, the agent information, because it's the case of replicating data from ServiceNow to a database. So once I save it, it's gonna create, like I said, the bulk share dynamic share. So we go look at the dynamic share. Now we'll see the fact that there's a change task and there's a request, service request dynamic shares created. And as you can see, based on feedback that we've had before, we set them to active as false first, just to kind of allow you to, so it doesn't pretty much fire right away. All you have to do is just go in here and just set them to active as true. But in case you want to go and do some configuration, it's defaulted to a queue that we create for you for the agent to consume from. So that's the basic idea. You have the dynamic share, you have the bulk share, you have the target queues all kind of already set up for you instead of having to go ahead and manually do each one by one. Here's the target queue right there. So that is the ready to run. It's been expanded beyond the instant table to allow you to choose any other table. Next thing I want to talk about is Observer. Observer is a separate application, but when you install it, it becomes part of the Perspectium application. As we talked about, now with actions, we've kind of configured it so that we have these hourly actions. We kind of did a review, talked to some customers, see which actions don't need to be run as often. We changed them now to be, some of these are actually run hourly, as you see the option right here for hourly. And with Observer, you can actually extend it to add your own actions. It's just a scripted box right here to run your own code to share out to us. Documentation is on the wiki to allow you to send in your own metrics. But as you see the option right here, now we have this new hourly option. So basically, this particular action, monitoring action will happen every hour versus before, as Craig mentioned, we only had the options for, every minute and every day, as well as ones that run when a particular error or an alert happens. So now we have this hourly option, and we've defaulted some for you to be hourly too. The ones that we talked to and got feedback on that we figured were the best to be reviewed hourly. So as related to Observer, for those who have Observer, there's a UI. With the UI now, we have this new overview page. This overview page, as we talked about, we reorganized the alerts, the grouping of things to monitor into different, better named things. For example, the excessive number of users, which is actually kind of reviewing all the different logged in sessions. So it kind of allows you to see all the different areas to view. Quick overview, a dashboard of the data that's being collected and monitored. So you can kind of, as you've done in the past with Observer, kind of monitor, trend it out, take a look at it, and so forth. You can actually add other windows if you want to. They'll be automatically added at the bottom. And then as you can see, it gets pulled in. The data starts getting loaded. You can drag and drop these windows around if you want to. It's kind of the flexible UI, and it saves it, caches it so that when you go back to it, it'll be there. And some other things we changed with Observer, the alert configurations. For those who configure, when these events should fire, meaning that when you receive, when we monitor your service now instance and you want to be alerted that there's a high alert, medium alert, or there's an issue to kind of take a look at, we've changed it so that you support the value of 0, meaning that the alert can fire immediately. So basically, once I get this error, I'm going to have it fire immediately versus choosing a value. And this is a free form text code, so you can actually put your own value if you want to. So now it'll fire every 78 minutes, for example. So this is just allows a little bit more flexibility so that it can fire more often and more customizable to how you want to fire versus kind of being stuck with the values that we've kind of set in the past as our values. We've had before, we kind of just tell you that these are the values that you should fire, but now we can actually enter your own values if you prefer as well. So going on to the next thing I'll show a little bit is our Nucleus platform. Nucleus, as Craig mentioned, allows you to integrate any of the current endpoints that we support. So basically, this is a user interface that you would have to be able to go in there and set the integration. For example, I'll click at add new integration right now. Test, I would do it for an incident. You choose the adapter you want to connect, adapter endpoint you want to connect with. So in this case, I'm going to do Jira. Go forward. You enter information on how you connect to Jira. And then you can go here and you actually can set up the different fields, the different mappings of the fields. So if you're going to map field priority, to the priority field in, using our common object format. Those who are familiar with our assignment integrations, we do common data. We use our common document formats, common objects, like common incident, common problem. That way, when you map it to that common object, it allows you to actually share it out to multiple different endpoints, and that's how we're leveraging that to be able to share out to, from, for example, Remedy to Jira, or Salesforce to Jira, Salesforce to Remedy, and so forth. But this is another UI to kind of set that up. It does require me to put some fields in here. So as you see, you can go back and you can actually go through and modify, add things. This is example of a Remedy integration that we previously set up before. But the idea here is that by doing this, you can actually set up multiple endpoints talking to each other. So in this case, we have BMC and Jira talking to each other. You can actually see what fields they are. We support the scripting options. You actually can do some scripting in there, allow you to kind of like what you do in ServiceNow, allow you to kind of say, if this value coming in should be this, we'll change it to that value, and so forth. So that's a basic idea of Nucleus. We have the ability to configure different endpoints to talk to each other, and also set up the mappings through this user interface we have. So those are my demos for now. I'll turn it back over to Craig.
All right, that's really cool. Yeah, and you can probably tell why we're so excited about what Nucleus is going to bring to us and to you and to our customers. I think it's really going to sort of open the door in terms of the integrations that you will now be able to manage through Perspectium. So that's why we're so excited about that one. The next theme that we're going to talk about is centered around privacy, and was largely inspired by the GDPR efforts that a lot of our customers are engaged in right now. Now, hopefully most of you will have heard about GDPR by now. GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation, and it's a set of rules that come into effect on May 25, so in 9 days from today. GDPR dictates how personal information may be gathered, used, and managed by organizations. While it's a regulation that originated in the EU, it's going to impact businesses worldwide due to the fact that it covers any business that has customers, employees, or suppliers that are EU citizens. One of the requirements of GDPR is that personally identifiable information, or PII, shouldn't be distributed without the permission of the data subject. And this is going to have quite an impact on ITSM. I mean, think of all the PII data that we have in an ITSM process. We collect names, phone numbers, office locations, IP addresses, email addresses, and a whole lot more. So to help with this, we recently introduced some new data obfuscation capabilities in our product, and we've included them in the Carbon release. Now you can ensure that PII data is not being sent to where it shouldn't be, and we offer a few different ways to do that. First of all, we have obfuscation by field, where we have fields that obviously will contain this sort of information, like name fields or phone number fields, those kind of things. We can also do obfuscation by pattern, where we search for something like a social security number or an email address or a phone number, anything that falls into a sort of well-defined pattern. We can search for that and find it even within a free text field. And then thirdly, obfuscation by reference. And this is where we, again, are able to look into free text fields, but do so based on data that is uploaded from an external source. So you might import a list of names from Active Directory, and then use this obfuscation capability to search for those names in records, and if they are found, obfuscate them, so you're not sort of passing that that sort of personally identifiable information around where you shouldn't be. Paul, anything to add, and can you show us a little bit of what this all looks like?
Yeah, so we also provide a dashboard, which I'll show right now too. So with the data obfuscation, to make itself more GDPR compliant, under the replicator section of our application, there's now a data obfuscation dashboard. And this data obfuscation dashboard will actually tell you, which of your dynamic and bulk shares that have our, obfuscation feature turned on. As you can see right here, I have both a dynamic share and a bulk share that are set up. And, it actually will give you kind of an overview of how you have it set up, where you're doing it by, as Craig mentioned, the field replacement and, the pattern types and how many records have been shared out that have been obfuscated. Just kind of give you, an overview of what you're doing. So, as I just mentioned, we have dynamic and bulk share both supporting obfuscation. So in this case, I'll show you how it looks for dynamic share. It's actually an option on the dynamic share. Going back to what we talked about with ready to run, we set up the dynamic share for you, and if you want to go through and add some more customization for it, you can. If you don't need to, then it's already ready to go. So in this case, we'll actually tell you how many records are obfuscated. In this case, as that image showed, it was 75. And there actually is an option under the advanced field, enable obfuscate data obfuscation. And once you select that option, it adds a related list. And this related list is a way for you to specify how to obfuscate the data. We support allowing to obfuscate more than one way on sharing out records. So for example, on this one, I'm doing it with the incident table. I can actually do multiple obfuscation on it. For example, say you want to obfuscate the social security numbers and you want to obfuscate names and you want to obfuscate this, it can all be done. And we specify an order field. This one should be applied first, this one should be applied second, and so forth. So in this case, just to show you what these obfuscation records look like, I have a mask category example. In this case, I'm masking the category field because I chose the field type. And then I also specify how I want to mask it. In this case, I'm just going to use, asterisk to mask it. If you choose, pattern, you can then specify the pattern, how you want to mask the pattern. And we give you a few examples. This is a social security number pattern. In case you just want some patterns and you're not sure exactly how to write out the pattern, we do give you a wiki link to kind of talk about how to do it. And if you have any feedback on patterns you want to see added, please definitely let us know. And finally, the last option that Craig mentioned, the replacement one. This one allows you to kind of specify which fields to replace. If you're specifying a field like Tom, the names, specifying the names to replace, specifying like specific names you want to obfuscate, and this is where we allow you to import using a CSV file. So in this case, you saw that we have one option is to obfuscate by the field category field, and the other one, I'll open this up once it finishes loading, is to do a replacement of name. I'll kind of show you what it does right here. It shows that I'm going to replace the names Bob Smith and Jane Jones with the star character. So if I go to the incident table and I just update a record, so you see right here we have a category of an inquiry/help. I'll change the description. I put Bob Smith testing, and I'll update that. Go to the outbound, open up the record. And you see the category has been blanked out. And then if we look at the short description, where I put Bob Smith has been blanked out too, because it honors the two obfuscation options I put on this particular dynamic share for the incident table. So that's the main idea with GDPR. So I'll toss it back to Craig now.
All right. Thank you, Paul. And I think I can pretty much guarantee that people heard the word obfuscation more times in the last 5 minutes than they have in their entire lives. But it is, as we said, it's an important part of privacy, and it's it's something that we can now help with Perspectium. Our last theme for the Carbon release centers around new endpoints and integrations, and there's even a little data center work in there as well. As we've done with all of our releases, we've added some new endpoints that you can use in your integrations. The three you'll see in Carbon are these. We've got one for OpsRamp, one for Sherwell, and one for Zendesk. Now, these are all bidirectional integrations that we developed based on requests from customers just like you. And they will allow you to connect your service management processes more broadly. Paul, anything to add to this list?
One thing I do want to mention is that they're new endpoints. So with the launch of Nucleus as well, is that these endpoints now can also talk to any of our other endpoints. So it's not just strictly ServiceNow to Sharewell or ServiceNow to Zendesk. Granted, the feedback we got for customers for these particular endpoints, it was for those use case of ServiceNow to each of these three. But we have heard about using these other ones like Sharewell to Remedy, for example. That's one that now will work as part of Nucleus.
Yeah, that's a good point. But of course, we don't just integrate with other applications. We've actually added some new service provider integrations as well, because service management processes don't all live within your four walls. Many processes require service providers to provide assistance or execute tasks. And in fact, we've had service provider integrations with BT, AT&T, HCL, and Atos for some time now. In the Carbon release, we're adding a couple of additional service provider integrations to the mix, and now you can integrate or connect to Getronics and Tivit. Just like the new endpoints we spoke about, these additional service provider integrations were requested by customers like you. So if we don't have an integration that you need, let us know, and we'll get it on the list. Paul, anything else to add there?
As you mentioned, Craig, now we have the ability to talk to other service providers, especially for a lot of our customers who are dealing with a lot of MSPs. So being able to now, besides talk to BT or AT&T or Atos or HCL, they can talk to Getronics and Tivit as well. It's just another option. And as you mentioned, we definitely want any feedback. There's other service providers that you guys are looking to connect to. We definitely want to hear about that. And this again, another thing that can also be, if we want, if you need to, we can also apply this to Nucleus to allow you to connect to a bunch of different service providers.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, any additional service providers that you would like to see added, or any additional endpoints that you would like to see added, please let us know, and we will certainly do our best to get it on the list. The last thing I wanted to mention in this section, though, is the new data center architecture that we're rolling out. While it's not technically part of Carbon, we're taking this opportunity to let you know about some changes that we've made in our data centers as we migrate to our Generation 3 architecture. The changes will mainly make it easier for us to maintain our products, but you will notice improvements in stability and security as we move to Generation 3. This new architecture will allow us to better separate services, and it includes the containerization of our message broker service, making it easier for us to deploy. Paul, have I missed anything there?
Okay, I think you got most of it. I mean, the main thing is, for us, we kind of, as we move from our Generation 2.5 to our Generation 3, architecture for our data centers, or where MBS and our message broker lives and everything, we want to make sure that we stay up to date, we stay current. We've upgraded the major components, like CentOS, our RabbitMQ that we use for messaging, those type of components, upgraded to the latest and greatest, most stable versions of them. We increased the commonality that we have between our different places. We use AWS. We also use Google Cloud Platform for our deployment. So we want to make sure that our data center has a common platform that can be used regardless of what our which place we're using it as. And as you see on there, we're making MBS now, so it can be deployed in containers. I know a lot of people like to use Docker to Dockerize stuff and put it in containers. This makes it easier for us to deploy. Again, related to where we deploy it, it really doesn't matter what version of Unix or even like Windows we want to. We can actually deploy MBS now, regardless what you're running. As long as it's a container running in Docker, and you're good to go. So that's a major benefit for us to make it easier to deploy our the data centers as we spin up new data centers in different regions, different areas for our customers all over the world.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so that's one. This is obviously an enhancement that may be a little less visible than the other things that we've spoken about on this webinar, but still, it's very important sort of back end stuff that's going to, like I said, increase the stability of our product, our security, and our ability to deploy quickly. So that's all important stuff. But of course, that's not all that's in the Carbon release. There are some other things that were done in the release that didn't really fit into those three themes. At the request of one of our customers, we added the ability to share only updated fields. This is a dynamic share option that shares out only the fields of a record that have been changed, instead of resending the entire record whenever there is an update. Paul?
So the main thing here is that if you definitely, for the cases where you have multiple ServiceNow instances that are synchronized with each other, you don't always want to share all the fields out, because there's a possibility that you might overwrite fields on the other side that you don't mean to overwrite. Like, say for example, on this side you update a priority from a priority 2 to a priority 1, but then on the other side you might have extra fields or other data that you don't want to be updated. By doing it, only sharing out the particular field that gets updated, you ensure that all your instances just get that one updated field, and you don't get conflicts on the other field that you don't mean to share out. Most of the time, as we saw in the example before from the data obfuscation, most of these records have a lot of fields, 30, 40, 50, 100 fields, and there's no reason to share out all these extra fields that have all this extra data if really all you're updating is one field. So that was a request, as Craig mentioned, from a customer, that let's just share out the one field that's only being updated. That way it ensures all the different instances just get the one update only, and only updates that one particular field, and doesn't try to do other stuff it doesn't need to do.
Yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense. And yeah, the customer, I think the customer in question there was Swiss Re, is that right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's a great example of a request that came into us from one of our customers that we were able to deliver a solution for. And again, if there's anything that you're not seeing in Perspectium that you'd like to see, absolutely let us know. The second thing to talk about on the sort of other improvements list is the ability to preview table maps. So instead of repeatedly modifying a record, finding the outbound message, and decrypting the value whenever you make a change to your outbound table map, you can now just use the preview option to speed up this process. Now, Paul's going to show us that in just a second, so I'll move on to the next one, and then we'll get him to show you the whole lot. We also now are supporting attachments going from ServiceNow to Salesforce. Up until now, we only supported attachments going the other way from Salesforce across to ServiceNow. So that's we've now got sort of bidirectional attachments between those two. And in addition to all of that, we fixed about 32 bugs in this release, continuing our quality initiative. So what I'd like to do now is actually hand back to Paul again and get him to show us some of these new capabilities in person.
So I'll start with the share updated fields option. On a dynamic share, since that's where the use case will be applied. If I open up this dynamic share for problem, you'll see under the option, once it loads, is the filter enrichment option. There's a share only updated fields option now. And this option, as we mentioned, we just share out only the fields that's updated. It allows you to also specify system fields, meaning that if you want to, besides sharing the field that was updated, or share all the system fields, meaning sys created, sys updated, sys created by, those type of fields, so you know who actually updated a record if you want that information. Because some people they always want the system field so they can accurately reflect it on the other side. And also it allows you to specify an ID field. Most of the time it's going to be sysid, but maybe you want the ID field, you're correlating on the correlation ID, for example, or correlation display. So this kind of allows you to specify which field you want to be the system field, in case you're sharing it elsewhere where it's not the same. So that's pretty much the setup for it. So using that as a setup, if I now go to a problem record, and if I open this record and I only change the short description right here, so then we go into our Perspectium outbound where we show our records. And you'll see a problem record right here. And then when you decrypt the value, you see that all you have was just a short description that I changed. And of course, since we have a sys ID field, the sys ID was also included, just because that's a way for it to be able to correlate the record on the other side when the record is sent out. So that's an example of that. Now, as far as the preview table map that Craig was mentioning earlier, it's with our table map feature, as a lot of about using this for SIAM, especially, you convert this to our common document, common objects that we were doing earlier with Nucleus. So if I use that as an example, I open up this incident, the common incident record. I've done my table maps. I did the table map. I did all the fields I want to map. Now I kind of want to know, how is this going to look? This is what I mapped all these fields. In this case, I actually mapped a lot of fields. But you have this option right here. You can choose a record. We will choose an incident record. Just choose a different one. In this case, I'm going to choose this record. Say OK, and then the preview option right there. So once I click this preview output option, you're going to see right here, it actually tells you what that document is. So this is using my table map and the field maps I create down here. And this actually gives me an idea of what my record will look like once I use this table map for my dynamic share. So, especially those who doing our SIAM integration, you'll see that, this is what it would basically look like using our table map feature to map out the records and share our records in. So that gives you an idea what it looks like before you actually start sharing out data. So back to you, Craig.
All righty, great, thank you, Paul. So there's quite a few changes there that have been incorporated in Carbon, and those, in addition to the major themes, are what makes up the release. So there it is. That's the Carbon release. There's those user experience improvements we spoke about earlier, including Nucleus, about which we're pretty excited. Those privacy enhancements, which will help you towards your GDPR certification, and then those new endpoints and integrations and data center updates and all of those kind of things all go together to make up the Carbon release. Of course, we couldn't have done this without you, our customers. So a special thank you to each of these customers who directly contributed to this release. Your enhancement requests and feedback are what help us make our product even better. So thank you, not only for being our customers, but for helping us create the best process integration for service management that there is. So how do you actually get your hands on Carbon? Well, it's pretty simple. There's no phone number or email or anything like that you need to worry about anymore. You just go to our webpage, click on support, and you can access the customer portal right from there. And that's where you can request your upgrade to Carbon. The other thing that you can do there is get complete details on all the new functionality from our wiki, which is also available from that same dropdown. Just click on the documentation tab there. So that's the Carbon release. With that, I would like to say thank you for joining us, and thank you to Paul also for being part of today's webinar.